and I'm the moderator for this session. We would all like to welcome and thank the participants who are joining us today for the virtual workshop on e-commerce and cybersecurity. While more participants are signing in, we'll play a short video.
A multi-stakeholder United Nations Summit, the World Summit on the Information Society Forum 2021 was initiated in January and will culminate in the final week held from the 17th to the 21st of May. Representing the largest gathering of the ICT for Development community globally, WSIS provides a platform for those using information and communication technologies to promote sustainable development, highlighting the role of the WSIS action lines to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So far, over 10,000 participants have joined in over the 120 virtual workshops featured, directly through Zoom, through Facebook Live, or other applications. Shaped through more than 500 inputs and suggestions received from our stakeholders during the open consultation process, the agenda of the WSIS Forum features a weekly program with exciting workshops and sessions based on thematic areas deemed as important by our stakeholders. We're delighted to see well-balanced contribution in terms of geographical location, gender balance, and stakeholder type, which has shown the positive commitment towards the WSIS process and the strengthening of the WSIS implementation of activities to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The agenda and program of the WSIS Forum cover all the action lines and are aligned with the SDGs. Some of the thematic areas addressed, known as special tracks, include ICTs and gender mainstreaming, ICTs and older persons, ICTs and accessibility for persons with disabilities and specific needs, cybersecurity, and many more, all of which are available on the 2021 WSIS Forum website. The WSIS Forum 2021 also features a high-level track, which gathers high-level representatives from various sectors with ministers, deputies, ambassadors, heads of regulatory bodies, private sector, civil society, academia, and the technical community to discuss the role of ICTs as a means of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and targets. The 2021 WSIS Chairman, His Excellency Mr. Maxime Parshin, and the high-level track facilitators will provide an executive summary of the high-level track outcomes during the final week of the forum, sharing the emerging trends, challenges, and opportunities noted by the diverse group of high-level track facilitators through the course of the high-level policy sessions. The sectoral, regional, and gender diversity of our stakeholders is also displayed in our virtual exhibition space that was inaugurated on March 15th, as well as our various social media platforms. We invite you to follow the WSIS process on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for regular updates and exciting news about the forum, such as the fact that we received a record number of submissions for the WSIS prizes this year, with over 1,270 projects submitted and 1.3 million votes that were cast for the 360 nominated projects. Visit the WSIS Prize website to learn more, with the 18 winners being announced during the 18th of May during the special ceremony. We are also pleased to announce that the WSIS Forum special track on ICTs and older persons will be initiating a special prize this year entitled the WSIS Healthy Aging Innovation Prize. Additionally, in collaboration with the Global Coalition on Aging, WSIS is co-organizing a virtual hackathon. With more than 1,000 registered participants, the hack will continue until April. Hackers had the opportunity to meet with experts in the field of ICTs and aging during the 3 mentorship sessions featured. Stay tuned for the announcements of the 4 winners, decided by a distinct panel of judges and announced on May 17th during the final week of the 2021 WSIS Forum. We look forward to your participation and thank stakeholders for their contribution in shaping this year's WSIS Forum with ongoing commitment and support. We would also like to extend a warm thank you to our partners, without whom this forum would not be possible. Thank you, and we look forward to a successful WSIS Forum 2021.
Thank you for that. Now, welcome to session 342, E-commerce and Cybersecurity. In this session, we'll address the ever-rising cyber threats to our daily lives, in particular to our online interactions. We'll also look at possible new ways of mitigating these threats. And we have assembled an exciting panel of experts to address these topics. Now, before we start, the following simple guidelines will help ensure the smooth running of this session. We'll take questions through the Q&A function of Zoom, and there'll be a Q&A session at the end of the workshop if time allows. Please mute your microphones during the session. The session is being recorded and will be available on the event page of the WSIS website soon after it's finished. Real-time captioning is available, and the session is being broadcast live on the WSIS Facebook page. Cybercrime represents an ever-present and ever-growing threat to us all. The threat has become even more real with our greatly increased reliance on the internet during the COVID crisis. One effect of COVID has been to massively increase the use of online transactions of all types, as well as seeing an increased use of electronic payments as opposed to cash. At least here in the UK, cash now seems something of an anachronism, with its use restricted to marginalised sections of society. Now, this has served to further increase the level of cyber threat, of course, and new threats are constantly emerging, as well as new versions of traditional threats based on confusing and misleading individuals. In this session, we'll explore this new cyber threat landscape, focusing on recent developments in threats and countermeasures. The organisers have assembled a diverse group of leading experts who will talk to you about their insights into these issues. Now, before I introduce the first speaker, I'd like to briefly mention one aspect of the cybercrime landscape that's often neglected, namely that of trust. To transact business online requires trust in the software, the network connection, and the hardware that we happen to be using. Now, sadly, as consumers, we have very little control over any of these. Our choices are often very restricted, and we know little or nothing about the security properties of our choices, and we have little or no comeback if we make poor choices. Now, a similar problem exists for service providers. How can they know whether the software, hardware, or other services that they purchase are trustworthy? They must also make business decisions, weighing security against cost. For example, in some cases, it will be more important to provide a low-cost service in an efficient way and leave application designers to make decisions about whether they need additional security, for example, for end-to-end encryption and integrity protection, as is commonly the case on today's internet. Now, fortunately, there have been a range of recent initiatives designed to enable both consumers and service providers to make more informed choices about products and services that they use through certification schemes, including, of course, via the European Union Cybersecurity Initiative involving ENISA. Now, whilst the notion of security certification is an old one, applying this in the commercial and consumer space is new. Mobile devices and networks are a key part of this modern cyber infrastructure, and the telecommunications industry in particular are developing certification schemes of their own. This is an exciting area, and I'm sure we'll all see soon more about security certified products, both in the commercial and the consumer spaces. Now, with that, I'd like to introduce the first panelist. I'm pleased to be able to introduce Ms. Lénique Pedron, Director of the Swiss initiative Trust Valley at EPFL Innovation Park Foundation in Switzerland. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Chris. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, first of all, I would like to thank with this organizer and the Geneva Xinjiang initiative for the invitation. A few words about the Trust Valley. The Trust Valley is a Swiss initiative in the field of digital trust and cybersecurity. It is a public-private partnership with academics on 3 levels of industrial, with startups, SMEs, and large companies. Now, I propose to you a short deep dive about the reason why master your digital identity and digital self-determination is a main topic to help raise awareness to citizens and also for companies. The first statement is don't be the easy target. The reason why is the impact of pandemic on the cybercrime landscape. Cyber criminals looking for lucrative and easy targets. They prey on the opportunity to take advantage of this surreal situation and focus even more on cyber criminal activities. Cyber criminals have been among the most adept at exploiting the COVID pandemic for the various scams and attacks they carry out, with a record number of potential victims staying at home and using online services across the world during the pandemic. The way for cyber criminals seeking to exploit emerging opportunities as the same that e-commerce do, and vulnerabilities have multiplied. We are under attack. We are in cyber attack sprint and a wave of misinformation. WHO named it infodemic. Cyber criminals show a strong agility. Some of them announce a ceasefire. It is showing the fighting scene on this surreal year happened to us. The impact of the COVID on cybercrime has been the most visible and striking compared to other criminal activity. Cyber criminals have been able to adapt quickly and capitalize on their anxiety and fears of their victims. Ransomware has been one of the most dominant cybercrime traits over the last several years. And the current crisis is unlikely to change that dynamic. The pandemic may multiply the damaging impact of the successful attacks against certain institutions, which reinforce the necessity for effective cyber resilience. And I really want to say that cyber resilience is a big word. We really want, it's really a need to work on it. The number of phishing attempts exploiting the crisis is expected to continue to increase. However, we also expect a greater number of inexperienced cybercriminals to deploy ransomware as a services. Not all of this campaign will result in successful attack due to the lack of experiences and technical skills of the criminals. So what we have see also is the dark web continue to various platforms such as marketplace. It's really important to understand that some e-commerce like cyber criminal marketplace is really a parallel. Yes, we see some vendors attempt to innovate by offering COVID-related product. Demand on supply chain dynamics for goods are likely to be affected if products occur via distributor. So, but it's a normal way. Yes, it is, because internet have only 30 years old. Internet is like teenager. So what I want to say, it's really now, we have a lot of so much opportunities with e-commerce, and it's really important to work on tools, on method to help human to work with this new kind of technology. So we are at a crossroad, and it's really important to work on the B2B side and also to the B2C with citizens to help all human and our population to rise about cybersecurity and continue to be safe online. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now, you mentioned that you work at two levels on digital trust and cybersecurity at the business-to-business level and with business to consumer with the ICON NGO. So you have a strategic overview of threats and opportunities. So what feedback and advice can you give about protecting consumer and employee data?
Yes, I think it's really important to work at these two kind of level, because one can go with another. And also it's really important, we really need to raise our digital self-determination as a citizen and as a company and create some new business model. At this time, it's really what we can see on the market. Data is really like petrol, it's really gold or what we want for some business model. But we can imagine the next business model with a respectful model from company to citizen. So I think it's really important also to give some more tips and things to do for citizens and help citizens to master their digital identity. It's that we've done with the NGO ICANN. We've tried to explain how we can understand what is our identity on the internet and how we can deal with it.
Thank you. And one more question. How can you raise the level of digital trust in cyberspace, given the importance of trust at all levels?
Yes, such a big question. It's really a big question. I think it's really important to work at 3 levels. First level, it's about state and responsible behavior in cyberspace. We need really to work with industrial level, and to also the 3rd level is about citizen. And I think we really need to have this ecosystem working together and try for the e-commerce way, try to be more respectful about the citizen and the data, but it's really a first way to go. Another way is about the technical side. So at this time, cybercrime is really lucrative, and they are looking for easy target because it's open bar like. So really we need to be more focused about that and try to not be a easy target.
That's great, thank you very much. Now our second panelist is Dr. Xiaodong Li, who's the founder and CEO at Fuxi Institution, and also a research professor at the Chinese Academy of Sciences and an adjunct professor at Tsinghua University. Dr. Li.
Thank you, Chris. So can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. I love the topics mentioned by the former panelist about the digital trust, but I want to emphasize we need some kind of new infrastructure to support the digital trust. So, of course, there's so many people mentioned the new distributed computing technologies, including privacy protection, privacy computing, or blockchain, or some blah, blah, so many technologies to build new infrastructures. So I think now there is a big challenge how to work together to do that. I think there is a big challenge is now how to maintain one internet, because there's so many data protection laws or regulations published by different countries. So we worry about the internet will be fragmented. So if we cannot maintain a one world and one internet, that means we cannot build a digital trust based on a unique or one infrastructure. And another challenge is, there's a lot of new technologies. Of course, just now we mentioned the certificate or encryption, but there's a wonderful technology, but there's another technology is quantum computing. If the quantum computing is will be very successful, that means so many encryption technologies will fail. So that means we cannot protect our information or data use the traditional encryption technologies. So I think that's another very big challenge. So that means we need new advanced technologies to protect our data and protect ourselves. And another thing is, in the past years, we asked where is the next billion people to connect the internet. But when we connect more people into the internet, that means we will face a lot of attacks, because the people is a lack of knowledge how to protect themselves. So more people connect the internet and more vulnerable issues we face. And the last point I want to mention, there is no 100% safe, no 100% security. So we need to work on the technologies and also work on the technology governance, but we need to work together with the social governance. So we will rely on the technology, but we cannot rely on the technology 100%. So there's another kind of layer. We need to discuss the ethic issues, how to make sure people can use the internet, use the cyberspace with some ethics, and then to protect others. So that is a very challenging area we face. So I think it's when I want to summarize, I mean, we have some challenge for new infrastructure, and we have challenge to build the new infrastructure, because there's new computing technologies will be challenged the encryption technologies. So we know 100% security, so we need to work together and with the social computing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now that raises all sorts of interesting questions, in particular about governance. What do you think the key governance issue is for the digital economy?
Yes, I think it's a very good question. I think we have been discussed for the internet governance or cyberspace governance for many years. But I think the most important thing of governance is what's the object with governance. So I want to emphasize the governance issue for data, or we can use the terminology for data governance, because how to protect the data is a very fundamental issue for the digital economy and also digital governance. But now, the most important issue for data governance is how to protect the ownership of the data. I know that in Europe, the GDPR is very good effort, but there is a lot of different kind of effort to protect the data. But eventually, so many ways was failed. So we need to protect the ownership of the data, but not only for the regulation or rules or laws, but also we need some technologies to really protect the data ownership. And then they can discuss how to use the data, how to use the data to support the digital economy, to support the digital development.
Thanks very much. That's a very interesting point, and something I'm going to have to think about more. But finally, you mentioned GDPR, and we've seen ever more data protection legislation worldwide. So what's the key influence on e-business, do you think?
Yes, I think of course, in the past years when GDPR effected, so there is a big influence for the e-business, because there's so many internet company care not too much for the protection of the data information. But that we also mentioned the internet is boundless, but the internet company will register in a specific country, so they need to follow different kind of laws. So when GDPR was effected, and it impacts so many big internet companies, which is not registered in Europe. So there is a big challenge for them to extend that business around the world. So that means the Europe used GDPR to influence all of the internet company around the world. So there's a big influence for them to how to extend the business, use different kind of laws. If in the future there's maybe 10 or 20 or 30 people have, 30 countries have different kind of laws, such as GDPR, in some sense, that might be a disaster for some internet company, because they cannot use a unique rule to do the business.
Thank you very much. And that's a key challenge for us all, I think. So thank you very much for your contribution. I'd like to introduce the third panelist, Dr. Christine Izrakor, founder and CEO of Cyber Pop-Up in the US, and many apologies for mangling your name. So please.
Thank you for the introduction, and you said it perfectly. So hi everyone, I'm Dr. Christine Izrakor. I'm the founder and CEO of Cyber Pop-Up, located out in Chicago, Illinois right now. A little bit about my background. I earned a PhD in security engineering. I spent about a decade of time working within the Fortune 100 space, particularly in United Airlines, leading everything from data loss prevention to make sure that sensitive data such as credit card information and things like that didn't leak from networks, to looking at the compliance side of things, to sort of third-party security, breaches, all topics that I think are relevant now more than ever. But I spent most of my time, and where my greatest passion, greatest passion is, and what I'll talk about most today, is around sort of the human element of security. So I did a lot with social engineering, training and awareness. So I was responsible for training and awareness for about 90,000 people across 354 cities across 50 countries. And so learned about the importance of helping people understand cybersecurity risks from a local and global perspective at all levels. Before I dig into that more, just a quick update on kind of where I am now. So switched my career to leading Cyber Pop-Up, which is where we help small and medium-sized businesses, especially who are going digital in this era and who are facing the same risks that large companies face. We're helping them get secure. So we focus on supporting businesses who tend to have a technology team in-house, but no cyber expert in-house, or limited cybersecurity expertise in-house. Because at the end of the day, I think all of these conversations are really important around these critical cybersecurity issues, but unless you truly understand them deeply, right, and have that expertise, it can be challenging to really bring into practice, right? And so we focus on making that cybersecurity expertise accessible and affordable for everyone. And I find myself, constantly raising awareness with business leaders, especially in the e-commerce space, and in light of this conversation, to how they can continue to not only secure their businesses, but also make sure that they are maintaining trust with their customers, right? Because I think that's really important. Maintaining compliance, which has already been a theme for this talk as well, and of course avoiding the many attacks and breaches that happen. And so I think that this, it's important because human beings are at the core of everything, right? Like, I believe in taking a very people-centric approach to cybersecurity. I've done that my entire career. And so in this transformation that's happening now, where most businesses weren't prepared to go digital at scale, right? Like it's been required in the last year, or have all of their, employees or people working remotely, having customers engaging with technology more at all levels, moving some operations, fully online, right? This, of course, as mentioned throughout this panel, comes with greater risk. And so I think it's important now more than ever for all businesses to have some form of awareness of this, right? And some form of cyber expertise within their companies across all of these different, I would say some like very niche domains, right? And so that's my main area of focus today. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. That's really helpful. Thank you very much. So I absolutely agree that it's undoubtedly true that humans are at the center of everything. So what can companies do to address the growing risks in e-commerce and beyond?
Yeah, sure. So I think that there's a couple of things. When we look at the threats that exist, right, first of all, there's no secret that I think the last stat I saw was 90% of cyber attacks involve some form of human error, right? And so you break this down, there's the unintentional threats like, phishing emails, right, which we saw a huge uptick in as a result of, COVID and some of the things going on, to, ransomware, which has been mentioned already, to human error, like, just application development errors and things like that, all the way to some of the intentional things like fraud, right, and insider threat. And so all of these different issues, right? But again, at the core of that, it all starts with people. And so I think on one end, it's if you're an organization, right, having your employees and those folks aware of cyber risk. On the other end, again, having the expertise and the skill set to combat these things. But taking it a step further, I think that you can invest as much as you want in, technology, right? And in the right, tools and things to combat these things. Like, I'm not saying that those things don't work, but again, if you don't invest in the awareness of the different layers of the organization, then it's, not as impactful. And so whether it's employees or senior leadership, there has to be that sort of awareness and commitment, I would say, to just like understanding the role that each person plays within securing companies. I think customers also need to know, or consumers need to know, how you're protecting their data, right? The role that they play in protecting their data. I don't think we talk about that enough, right? Like, we talk a lot about consumer privacy rights, which is super important, right? But it's also like, what are the responsibilities of consumers and customers when it comes to cybersecurity, and making them aware of that. I think that also, key stakeholders are another, group to focus on. So, bottom line, I know I'm saying a lot here, but I think everybody needs to be educated on what the basics are and that shared responsibility. And, keywords, as I, kind of wrap up my thought here, is I think that it's important to communicate these things in a way that resonates with the audience, right? So you wouldn't, train or make aware a waitress in a restaurant, for example, the same way that you would, make aware a tech person managing the Wi-Fi in that same restaurant from a cybersecurity standpoint. You have to tailor the messaging and tailor the content to the audience so that it truly resonates. Customize the messaging, make it fun, make it relatable, make it continuous, right? Like, annual cybersecurity training is not the answer. It's great, it helps, but I think, games, office hours, webinars, events, desktop backgrounds, like, the list goes on and on, like, little things that you can do to keep cybersecurity top of mind for people, no matter what their role or no matter what their, I would say, like, maturity when it comes to cybersecurity is super important. Again, I said a lot, but yeah, I'm really passionate about this, and yeah, definitely focus on that human element.
That's great. Thank you very much. And I think that goes to the heart of the problem that we face. So thank you. The next panelist is Mr. Kelvin Coleman, Executive Director at the National Cybersecurity Alliance in the US. So Mr. Coleman, please.
Chris, thank you so very much. And it's great to be with you all. Like you said, either this morning or this afternoon or this evening, wherever you happen to be in the world, which is the best thing about our gathering here today, because, I truly believe that just as Christine said, if cybersecurity was just a technical issue, we could have solved this a long time ago. This is an issue about people. And as I look at technology, I look at technology in three areas, right? Cybersecurity: products, processes, and people. We do a fairly good job at creating great products. I know the member companies of the National Cybersecurity Alliance, they represent about $7.8 trillion in market cap. You don't get to that number without being good and putting out good stuff. And so, on the product side, I think we've done really well. Processes, there are forums like ours, and certainly working with you all in creating some great processes around cybersecurity, but we haven't done a great job of investing in people. Now, the irony is that the cyber malicious actor, the bad actor, they have done a great job of investing in people. We all know the world faces a dangerous combination of known and unknown cyber vulnerabilities. We face, just this onslaught of attacks that's coming from all directions. And the cyber criminals, they are communicating, they are coordinating, they are collaborating. Why shouldn't we be doing that as well? And so, for the National Cybersecurity Alliance, we look at this issue as an issue of, again, technology is certainly a very important part of this, obviously. But we've underinvested in the people part of it and partnerships. And that's certainly something we would like to, amplify and enhance. And if you only look at the last 5 years, right? 5 years ago, we had about 15 billion connected devices around the world. Well, today we have about 20 billion connected devices around the world, about a 33% increase there. In the next 5 years, it's going to be about 60 billion connected devices around the world, a threefold increase, right? About 300%. And so 33% in the last 5 years, which we all thought, wow, what a great, revolution of technology. Well, it's going to absolutely be, seem like an infant compared to the next 5 years. And certainly if you only look at the numbers of investment in IoT, which is going to total about $1.1 trillion US dollars in the next 2 years. That's a very short amount of time to get to $1.1 trillion in investment. So again, I really think that this is a great opportunity for us to rethink how we invest in people as it relates to cybersecurity.
That's great. Thank you very much. So you work for the National Cybersecurity Alliance. What's the mission of the Alliance?
I do. I lead the National Cybersecurity Alliance. And I will point out to your audience that it's about 6 o'clock US. So yeah, I work very hard for the NCSA and enjoy it actually. The National Cybersecurity Alliance, our mission is very clear, to convene, to educate, and to amplify. I think this is a great example of the convening part, taking advantage of some of the best minds in the world and bringing together and trying to figure out the best way forward. The education part is rather simple as well. We are trying to make sure that folks, not only in the US, but again, partnering with you all, increasingly people around the world understand how they can play a part in mitigating the challenges of cybersecurity. It was said earlier that, I'm often asked by media, give me the new threat, right? What's the new shiny object? And I said, well, phishing. They said, no. Tell me something exciting, something that people, spear phishing. No. Give me the next thing. Okay, well, phishing. I don't know, phishing still is a very used asset by the cyber malicious actor. And so making sure folks understand how to avoid being a victim of phishing is very important to us. That's that education part. Amplification, exactly what I'm hearing today. I'm writing notes myself as my colleagues talk, and I want to amplify their message. I want to make sure that it's getting out there. So convening, educating, amplifying.
That's great. Of course, I work for a university, so I'm particularly interested in education. And so how do you, as the NCSA, work with stakeholders to promote education in cybersecurity?
In a number of ways, Chris. One way, again, with our board member companies representing such a massive market around the world, we work with them to make sure that, and government partners, by the way, both in the US and outside the government, we create a number of education programs for people. You may have heard, I hope, of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We recognize it every October, at least here in the States, but I'm really trying to partner with many of you to make sure that we're recognizing it around the world. Cybersecurity Awareness Month in October is just a great opportunity for us to come together and amplify this message. Also, we have what's called Data Privacy Day. Now, many of you probably have heard of that. January 28th every year, started in Europe several years ago. We've, of course, adopted it here in the US. And so we lead that for North America, talking about the importance of data privacy, which has been absolutely phenomenal. We also have programs like the Identity Management Day. You may have never heard of Identity Management Day. Well, that's because we celebrated it for the first time this year. At the National Cybersecurity Alliance, we love security so much, we make up holidays. And we celebrated Identity Management Day, the second Tuesday of April of this year. Cybersecurity My Business, I think Lenning, and please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, I think Lenning spoke about from Trust Valley, about small and medium-sized businesses, how important that is. Cybersecurity My Business, that's all we focus on. Small and medium-sized business. Christine said it best in terms of these folks have a specialty. They have something that they do very well. Cybersecurity is not it. And so you have to have someone come in to help them to protect their information. And certainly that's something that we do. So, but again, Chris, thanks so much, very much for having me here today.
Well, thank you very much for your participation. It's great to have so many enthusiasts involved in today's session.
Thank you.
The fifth panelist I'd like to introduce is Ms. Sem Ponnambalam, who's co-founder and president of Zahive, US, Canada, and UK. So thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, and thank you to the World Summit on Information Society for this opportunity to speak. So I just wanted to quickly let you know, Exahive is a cybersecurity company, and we offer secure, compliant, end-to-end data transmission for enterprises and IoT, along with enterprise education and governance management tools. So I'd like to speak from some lessons learned, having worked with some of our clients in North America and Europe, and also some training that we've gotten and research that we've done. So just wanted to put some stats out there first of all. So globally, e-commerce businesses are expected to reach about 4.5 trillion by end of 2021. But global cybercrime damage by 2021 is about 16.4 billion a day. So that's a huge number. And as some of our panelists previously had mentioned, attacks on IoT devices are soaring quite high. And especially in the next few years, there'll be more IoT devices that are not encrypted compared to actual humans, actually. So, and ransomware tends to be the biggest cause of damage, and it's expected to reach about $21 billion, especially in the e-commerce space. And a business actually falls victim to ransomware attack every 11 seconds. So that's pretty huge. And what we've noticed anyways in North America is some of the notable e-commerce breaches was in 2020 was Shopify data breach, where it was actually disgruntled employees that led to the compromise of the data for the retailer. As well, Barnes & Noble was another one where they were sent an email to customers in October 2020 to warn them about a data breach that exposed their personal information. So as some of the speakers have already mentioned, some of the big types of attacks have been, of course, phishing, credit card fraud in the e-commerce space, botnets. This is when bots or automated programs perform specific tasks online, and they actually behave like real customers or clients, and they cause damage, as well as malware, e-skimming, and some of the newer ones is SQL injection, where your e-commerce site isn't securely stores data from your SQL database. So if that's not properly validated, a malicious query can be injected. Another one is cross-site scripting, where this involves inserting a piece of malicious code into your web page. Unlike other attacks, this one doesn't impact the site itself, but it would impact the users, for example, the shoppers, or exposing them to malware and other types of phishing. So for organizations, it's important to have an incident response plan. This is what we've seen based on our experience, and they need to ensure that it's actually incorporated within their business continuity plan. So this looks at notification, who has access to secure business continuity information, who are your key staff and responsibilities. Do you have your information stored off-site? Who has access to that? Do you have a recovery action plan? How is your customer data handled, especially depending on the location as well, whether it's GDPR or other regulations or frameworks that you need to be compliant with? Do you have a critical vendor, supplier contact list? It's important to have alternative critical vendor supplier list in case your current one goes down or is unable to provide service, or you need to have your information documented, especially for insurance purposes, right? So, and finally, the technology requirements that they need to make sure that your software and your hardware, what are the minimum requirements in a critical business process? You have your information backed up, and also continuously review and revise, right? So it's really important, especially if you've been in a breach, to take the steps or you've been notified, right? The next thing, what I've noticed as well, is to identify steps to prevent breaches in the future. So from a consumer perspective, if you're shopping online, make sure you're going to a transport layer security protocol. It's a reputable company, and you look on to make sure that the URL starts with HTTPS and has a little padlock. Make sure that there's a separate server for payment information, and enable two-factor authentication for all your online accounts. Another thing I would encourage people to do is not to store your credit card information online, and to disable the autocomplete feature on your browser. So that's really important. For the organizational perspective, it's really important to train your boards, your executives, employees, value chains on the importance of cyber threats, as some of the other panelists have said. And it's also important to undergo at least biannual third-party audits of your services. Something else we've also noticed is that organizations need to be aware of is about the different regulatory framework repercussions. So depending on your location, where you're based, whether you're in North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, Oceania, Latin America, or Middle East, there are different frameworks and different regulations that you need to be compliant with. And this includes, in the e-commerce space, payment card industry data standard, general data protection regulation. For example, if you're in North America, the California Consumer Privacy Act. So it's really important to investigate and make sure you're up to date and current. If you do go through a breach, you should also know to report the crime to law enforcement in a timely manner, review your response plan, and notify your customers on your value chain in a timely manner as well. And finally, I encourage all of you to remain vigilant, continue to be educated, and as these breaches, unfortunately, will continue to be a common occurrence. So that's what I've seen so far.
That's great. Thank you very much for your contribution. We're running a little short of time. And in fact, I think you answered the questions that I wanted to ask you. So I think we best move on to the last panelist, and hopefully we'll have a little time to return at the end. Okay. So thank you again. I'd like to introduce the final panelist, Mr. Joshua Arvin Lat, who's the CTO at NewWorks Interactive Labs in the Philippines. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you for that. So thank you again for giving me the opportunity to contribute here. But a quick background about myself. For the past 10 to 12 years, I have managed and built complex web and mobile e-commerce systems and even fintech platforms. So what I can definitely contribute here would be my experience and knowledge working in e-commerce startups 8 to 10 years ago. So I have worked on 2 or 3 or 4 of those, some of those all at the same time. And I have seen the transformation of technology on how development teams build these e-commerce platforms. So in the past, of course, we can build things from scratch. And this past couple of years, there have been technologies like, let's say, containers like Docker, or even serverless technology. And there are now platforms that offer no-code or low-code solutions. And there are still teams out there in the world who still use the easy to install or easy to use software and tools so that they can launch their e-commerce products right away. So at least this past 10 to 12 years, I had that exposure, and I was able to compare the experiences working on all those tools and systems, along with the different companies and people from different teams all around the world. So there, now as the Chief Technology Officer of NewWorks Interactive Labs, I'm there to take care of course, the internal team's security, as well as the security of the sites of the clients of NewWorks. So definitely I have been part of initiatives that focus on making sure that their site is secure, whether we built it or not for them. So if we built it, I had to make sure that the practices that my team is working with are correct. So let's say that making sure that we're not using production data in our local and staging environments, because of course that's one of the major mistakes that development teams do when trying to build sites for clients. So the problem there is if the staging environment gets hacked, the data of the customers gets stolen as well. And sometimes the production and staging environments or the test environments are not properly or are not equally supported in terms of like the security mechanisms. So definitely the production systems, the live systems are definitely made more secure, while the staging environments are intentionally made less secure because of course they're test environments. But if you're using the customer's data in the staging environment for testing purposes because it's super close to the production data, then if that system gets hacked, then the customer data gets lost. So of course, I have to make sure that those things are happening. So here, what I would recommend is that for everyone watching, I want you guys to listen to the other panelists, listen to the other talks here, because right now during the pandemic, everything or most of the things have gone online. And the tricky part here is now that a lot of people have lost their jobs and things are super chaotic all around the world. A lot of attacks have been automated as well. So when I did study offensive security 10 to 15 years ago, some attacks are done manually. Right now, when I reviewed it 5 years ago, I did find out that a lot of attacks have been automated. So if you have a vulnerability there in some sort of security database, you don't need to be a super experienced hacker to use that knowledge and attack an existing site randomly. And yeah, a lot of random things are happening around the world, and we need to prioritize security, especially in the e-commerce sector.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. Given your experience in helping provide security and having seen the rise in AI and machine learning being used in cybersecurity, how do you think these technologies have helped make us more secure?
Yes, thank you for that. All right, that's a very interesting question, and definitely, the tricky thing here is that every 5 years or every 5 to 10 years, there's always a new technology or concept that's part of the hype cycle, right? So the thing that I'll share here is that machine learning, artificial intelligence, it's not just hype. There's a certain portion there that's very relevant and useful to all of us. And a lot of companies and products have been using that already. So what I would recommend is that, of course, when you're dealing with these types of topics, we need to be very practical and pragmatic in implementing this and using it in our systems. So one thing that I would definitely recommend all of us to search or at least check would be anomaly detection or automated anomaly detection. That could apply to human behavior when using your site. So let's say that a customer trying to purchase, let's say, baby products in your e-commerce website suddenly decided to purchase a lot of things using a credit card, using credit card information, and suddenly there's an anomaly. Anomaly is detected by your system. Then that's one possible application of machine learning, which will help optimize the processes so that there's no human that needs to be there to even process each transaction. Second would be, let's say, log analysis and even spam detection. And even if we guys are not aware of the solutions that we're using, some of the tools that we may be using already may be using machine learning and artificial intelligence behind the scenes. So for one thing, 10 years ago, when there's the startup boom, a lot of companies and teams want to build everything from scratch. So now, 3 to 5 years ago, what has changed would include teams trying to make the most out of existing tools and services. So now, let's say that you use SendGrid or some other tool or maybe AWS or some other platform. It's important for us to be aware of the security features that those services have, because some of those may already be using artificial intelligence and machine learning so that you don't have to build it yourself. That's one. And also, in terms of like automating fraud detection, let's say that a payment gateway integration company, and you're working with that company to allow customers to pay through your site, they will probably offer you additional services and features like fraud detection systems. And I have personally used that, and I was surprised that, wow, it's automated. There are several layers there. Sometimes it's rule-based at the start if there's very minimal data. And then when you have more data, you can make use of machine learning to automate some of the processes. So definitely, if you are able to work with experts on these fields, then definitely they can recommend the right solutions. Because of course, if you talk to beginners or maybe just enthusiasts on this field, they would tell you, oh, you need a lot of data to get things done. But in reality, there are a lot of veteran techniques or veteran moves where even with very minimal data, you can make use of machine learning or even existing machine learning models to solve your problem. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Great, thank you very much for your contribution. We have just a couple of minutes left, and I noticed there's been a couple of questions on Q&A, so hopefully we can have time to have quick answers to these. One of these is, how would you develop a cybersecurity education strategy in companies with diverse employee groups, age and expertise-wise? And Lenig, I believe, has offered to answer this.
Yes, thank you very much, Chris. About my experience, what is really important is talk about culture. It's not about the age, because for sure the young generation, the youth generation is more useful with all the tools, but sometimes they don't understand what is going on with their digital identity. So what I can say about that is to think a global culture about cybersecurity, but about digital trust, because cybersecurity sometimes is only costs and issue and threat, but really it's also an opportunity, a way to go. So it's really important to have a strategic view on the culture of digital trust in our companies.
That's great, thank you very much. And we have two written answers from Dr. Lee and from Xiaodong and from Christine. Christine offered to elaborate slightly on her answer in the Q&A, so about your quick 4-step framework. So if you have a couple of seconds.
Yeah, sure. So I feel like this is something that I dealt with throughout my career. I mentioned that I did training and awareness for 90,000 people across all these different countries, different age groups. And so through that process, I learned of these kind of 4 steps. The first is to define what your mission is. So I started by inventorying the different work groups in our company, the risks they face, what they care about, what their motivations are, in order to find a common denominator and a mission that everybody can get behind and make a statement out of that. And then the second step is to help people understand that threats are real and not theory. I think sometimes there's still this misconception that it happens to other companies, doesn't necessarily apply to us, or doesn't necessarily apply to me in my role. And so I was always very clear and shared real stories about attacks against our company, how employees could help stop those attacks through phishing, by avoiding phishing emails, things like that. The third step is to help people understand the role that they play specifically. So sharing those clear actions people can take and breaking those instructions up by different groups, tailoring them to the different audiences. So if you have different levels of understanding of technology or cybersecurity, that's the opportunity to really customize that messaging to meet people where they are. And then the last step is, again, acknowledging everybody isn't a cybersecurity expert, and we don't expect everybody to have all the answers. And so helping people understand where they can get help. Who do they report things to? And I feel like those 4 steps, no matter what audience you're dealing with, you can tailor that to that audience, and it makes a difference.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think we're running out of time now. It's just 2 minutes to the end of the session. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the panelists for their hugely valuable contributions. I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone listening has gained a lot from this session. But it seems to me the key themes that have come up have been compliance, governance, and above all else, education and awareness. Cybersecurity is all about people. So with that, I'll just go over to the closing message and thank you all for participating. A final summary of the workshop will be provided during the WSIS Forum 2021 outcomes. And a recording of this session will be available on the forum website after the session. And before we close, I'd like to take a moment to thank the WSIS Forum 2021 partners. And I believe to close down, there'll be a video. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Have a good day, evening or morning.